Namaste. Dhanavat Pranam. Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj. We are reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 13, Text 12. Ityukto dharma rajena sarvam tat samavarnayat yatanu bhutam krimaso vinayadu kulakshayam. Thus being questioned by Maharaj Yudhisthira, Mahatma Vidura gradually described everything he had personally experienced except news of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Text 13. Nanvapriyam durvishaham nirnam svayam upastitam navedayat sakaruno dukitan drastun akshama. Compassionate Mahatma Vidura could not stand to see the Pandavas distressed at any time. Therefore he did not disclose this unpalatable and unbearable incident because calamities come of their own accord. Purport. According to Niti Shastra, civic laws, one should not speak unpalatable truth to cause distress to others. Distress comes upon us in its own way by the laws of nature, so one should not aggravate it by propaganda. For a compassionate soul like Vidura, especially in his dealings with the beloved Pandavas, it was almost impossible to disclose an unpalatable piece of news like the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Therefore, he purposely refrained from it. Text 14. Kanchit kalam atavatsit satkrito deva vatshukam Vrator jestasya shreyaskrit sarvesham shukam avahan. Thus Mahatma Vidura, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his elder brother, and in this way bring happiness to all the others. Purport. Saintly persons like Vidura must be treated as well as the denizen from heaven. In those days, denizens of heavenly planets used to visit homes like that of Maharaj Yudhisthira, and sometimes persons like Arjuna and others used to visit higher planets. Narada is a spaceman who can travel unrestrictedly, not only within the material universes, but also in the spiritual universes. Even Narada used to visit the palace of Maharaj Yudhisthira, and what to speak of other celestial demigods. It is only the spiritual culture of the people concerned that makes interplanetary travel possible, even in the present body. Maharaj Yudhisthira therefore received Vidura in the manner of reception offered to the demigods. Mahatma Vidura had already adopted the renounced order of life, and therefore he did not return to his paternal palace to enjoy some material comforts. He accepted out of his own mercy what was offered to him by Maharaj Yudhisthira, but the purpose of living in the palace was to deliver his elder brother, Dhṛtarāṣṭra, who was too much materially attached. Dhṛtarāṣṭra lost all his state and descendants in the fight with Maharaj Yudhisthira, and still, due to his sense of helplessness, he did not feel ashamed to accept the charity and hospitality of Maharaj Yudhisthira. On the part of Maharaj Yudhisthira, it was quite in order to maintain his uncle in a befitting manner, but acceptance of such magnanimous hospitality by Dhṛtarāṣṭra was not at all desirable. He accepted it because he thought that there was no alternative. Vidura particularly came to enlighten Dhṛtarāṣṭra and to give him a lift to the higher status of spiritual cognition. It is the duty of enlightened souls to deliver the fallen souls, and Vidura came for that reason. But talks of spiritual enlightenment are so refreshing that while instructing Dhṛtarāṣṭra, Vidura attracted the attention of all the members of the family, and all of them took pleasure in hearing him patiently. This is the way of spiritual realization. The message should be heard attentively, and if spoken by a realized soul, it will act on the dormant heart of the conditioned soul. And by continuously hearing, one can attain the perfect stage of self-realization. Text 15. Abhibrad Arya Madandam Yatavad agkakarishu yabhadadhara sudratvam sapadvarsha satam yama. As long as Vidura played the part of a Sudra, being cursed by Manduka Muni, our Yama officiated at the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful acts. Purport. Vidura, born in the womb of a Sudra woman, was forbidden even to be a party of royal heritage, along with his brothers Dhṛtarāṣṭra and Pandu. Then how could he occupy the post of a preacher to instruct such learned kings and kshatriyas as Dhṛtarāṣṭra and Maharaj Yudhisthira? The first answer is that even though it is accepted that he was a Sudra by birth, because he renounced the world for spiritual enlightenment by the authority of Rishi Maitreya, and was thoroughly educated by him in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to occupy the post of an acharya, or spiritual preceptor. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anyone who is conversant in the transcendental knowledge or the science of Godhead, be a Brahmin or a Sudra, a householder or a sannyasi, is eligible to become a spiritual master. Even in the ordinary moral codes maintained by Chanakya Pandit, the great politician and moralist, there is no harm in taking lessons from a person who may be by birth less than a Sudra. This is one part of the answer. The other is that Vidura was not actually a Sudra. He was to play the part of a so-called Sudra for the 100 years, being cursed by Manduka Muni. He was the incarnation of Yamaraj, one of the 12 Mahajans, on the level of such exalted personalities as Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kapila, Bhisma, Prahlad, etc. Being a Mahajan, it is the duty of Yamaraj to preach the cult of devotion to the people of the world, as Narada, Brahma, and the other Mahajans do. But Yamaraj is always busy in his plutonic kingdom punishing the doers of sinful acts. Yamaraj is deputed by the Lord to a particular planet, some hundreds of thousands of miles away from the planet of Earth, to take the corrupt souls after death and convict them in accordance with their respective sinful activities. Thus Yamaraj has very little time to take leave from his responsible office of punishing the wrongdoers. There are more wrongdoers than righteous men. Therefore Yamaraj has to do more work than other demigods who are also authorized agents of the Supreme Lord. But he wanted to preach the glories of the Lord, and therefore, by the will of the Lord, he was cursed by Manduka Muni to come into the world as the incarnation of Vidura, and work very hard as a great devotee. Such a devotee is neither a Sudra nor a Brahmana. He is transcendental to such divisions of mundane society, just as the personality of Godhead assumes his incarnation as a Hog, but he is neither a Hog nor a Brahma. He is above all mundane creatures. The Lord and his different authorized devotees sometimes have to play the role of many lower creatures to claim the conditioned souls, but both the Lord and his pure devotees are always in the transcendental position. When Yamaraj thus incarnated himself as Vidura, his post was officiated by the Aryama, one of the many sons of Kasyapa and Aditi. The Adityas are sons of Aditi, and there are 12 Adityas. Aryama is one of the 12 Adityas, and therefore it was quite possible for him to take charge of the office of Yamaraj during his 100 years' absence in the form of Vidura. The conclusion is that Vidura was never a Sudra, but was greater than the purest type of Brahmana. Text 16. Yudhisthiro labdha rajo dristva pautram kulandaram pratribhir loka palabair mumhudhe parayashriya. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of one grandson, competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Maharaj Yudhisthira reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. Purport. Both Maharaj Yudhisthira and Arjuna were unhappy from the beginning of the battle of Kurukshetra, but even though they were unwilling to kill their own men in the fight, it had to be done as a matter of duty, for it was planned by the supreme will of Lord Sri Krishna. After the battle, Maharaj Yudhisthira was unhappy over such mass killings. Practically there was none to continue the Kuru dynasty after them, the Pandavas. The only remaining hope was the child in the womb of his daughter-in-law, Uttara, and she was also attacked by Asvatthama, but by the grace of the Lord, the child was saved. So after the settlement of all disturbing conditions, and re-establishment of the peaceful order of the state, and after seeing the surviving child, Parikshit, well satisfied, Maharaj Yudhisthira felt some relief as a human being, although he had very little attraction for material happiness, which is always illusory and temporary. 17. Text 17. Evam griheshu saktam nam pramatanam tad ihaya atyakramad avigyata kalaparama dustara. Insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are too much attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thought. Purport. I am now happy. I have everything in order. My bank balance is quite enough. I can now give my children enough estate. I am now successful. The poor beggar sannyasis depend on God, but they come to beg from me. Therefore I am more than the Supreme God. These are some of the thoughts which engross the insanely attached householder who is blind to the passing of eternal time. Our duration of life is measured, and no one is able to enhance it even by a second against the scheduled time ordained by the Supreme Will. Such valuable time, especially for the human being, should be cautiously spent, because even a second passed away imperceptibly cannot be replaced, even in exchange for thousands of golden coins amassed by hard labor. Every second of human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to the problems of life, i.e. repetition of birth and death, and revolving in the cycle of 8,400,000 different species of life. The material body, which is subject to birth and death, diseases and old age, is the cause of all sufferings of the living being. Otherwise the living being is eternal, and he is never born, nor does he ever die. Foolish persons forget this problem. They do not know at all how to solve the problems of life, but become engrossed in temporary family affairs, not knowing that eternal time is passing away imperceptibly, and that their measured duration of life is diminished every second, without any solution to the big problem, namely repetition of birth and death, disease and old age. This is called illusion. But such illusion cannot work on one who is awake in the devotional service of the Lord. Yudhisthira Maharaj and his brothers, the Pandavas, were all engaged in the service of Lord Sri Krishna, and they had very little attraction for the illusory happiness of this material world. As we have discussed previously, Maharaj Yudhisthira was fixed in the service of the Lord Mukunda, the Lord who can award salvation, and therefore he had no attraction even for such comforts of life as are available in the kingdom of heaven, because even the happiness obtained on the planet of Brahmaloka is also temporary and illusory. Because the living being is eternal, he can be happy only in the eternal abode of the kingdom of God, Paravyoma, from which no one returns to this region of repeated birth and death, disease and old age. Therefore any comfort of life or any material happiness which does not warrant an eternal life is but illusion for the eternal living being. One who understands this factually is learned, and such a learned person can sacrifice any amount of material happiness to achieve the desired goal known as Brahma Shukam, or absolute happiness. Real transcendentalists are hungry for this happiness, and as a hungry man cannot be made happy by all comforts of life minus foodstuff, so the man hungry for eternal absolute happiness cannot be satisfied by any amount of material happiness. Therefore the instruction described in this verse cannot be applied to Maharaj Yudhisthira or his brothers and mother. It was meant for persons like Dhṛtarāṣṭra, for whom Vidura came especially to impart lessons. Thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 18 on Wednesday, hopefully. All glories to Srila Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charya Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to our Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham ki jai. Mayapur Dham ki jai. Nishingapali Dham ki jai. Ekachakra Dham ki jai. Jai Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Jai Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju ki jai. Jai Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham ki jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund ki jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi ki jai. Nitai Gora Hari 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 Bol.